sometimes people will claim that Jesus never claimed to be God. He thought himself as maybe another prophet from God, or just a really good teacher, or a really great example for us to follow. But that's not the Jesus of the Bible. It's interesting, in the Old Testament, when God had prophets speak on his behalf through inspiration, they always said, well, thus says the Lord. When Jesus arrived on the scene, he said, you have heard that it's been said, but I now tell you, because he's God in the flesh speaking. So right away, he was different than those that had preceded him. In addition, Jesus understood very clearly that you were to worship no other gods but the true God in the Old Testament. And as I've said in other lessons as well as other FAQs, Jesus accepted divine worship. He accepted people worshiping as God in the flesh, knowing that the first commandment said, you shall have no other gods. And yet, when people said, you're the Lord, you're the Christ, you're the Messiah, Jesus didn't say, no, you have this wrong, you must be confused with someone else. No, he accepted that worship and considered it appropriate. That's another thing you need to remember. And Jesus did claim on many occasions to be God in the flesh. You got John chapter 10, verse 30, where Jesus says, I and the Father are one, and the Greek word for one there is a gender neutral, which refers to the fact that Jesus and the Father are one in essence, not just one in purpose. The Greek makes it very clear. Or in John chapter 8, verse 58, Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am. Jesus is making an extraordinary claim there that he is the Son of God. He is God himself, because in the Old Testament, I am was the name for God. Sometimes it was translated Yahweh. Unfortunately, some people translate it today Jehovah. That's not really a healthy translation. But the point is, in the Old Testament, the people knew from Exodus chapter 3, verse 14, it was the title for God. Here Jesus is saying, I'm God. He doesn't say before Abraham was, I pre-existed. I was around. I was. No, he says before Abraham was, I am, claiming to be the very Son of God. In fact, when you read the gospel accounts, those eyewitness accounts of Jesus' life and ministry, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, anytime Jesus says, I am, he's claiming to be God. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the living water. I am the bread of life. He's saying, literally, I'm God, the bread of life. I'm God, the resurrection. And his opponents knew exactly what he was saying. Check out John chapter 8. In John chapter 10, you will see when Jesus makes those statements, the religious leaders of the day pick up stones to stone him to death for blasphemy, because they knew Jesus was claiming to be God. So this idea that Jesus never claimed to be God tells me that maybe the person making that claim needs to read the Bible a little more carefully. Hey, thanks for the question. Keep them coming, and make sure you use these as a way to share your faith and maybe win others through God's work to the faith. God's blessings.